Throughout history, God has often worked through the most unexpected individuals to fulfill His divine purposes. From Moses, a hesitant leader, to David, a humble shepherd, the Bible is filled with stories of God choosing unlikely figures to lead His people and accomplish miraculous feats. Could it be that in today's chaotic world, Donald Trump is one such chosen figure? Many believe the events of his life, his rise to power, and the actions he has taken bear the marks of divine orchestration. They see in Trump's journey a parallel to biblical leaders who were called upon to act as instruments of God's will. The idea of a chosen one is not new to Christianity. It's a concept deeply rooted in Scripture, where God often works through flawed individuals, using them to achieve outcomes that defy human expectations. This video will explore 7 biblical signs that point to Donald Trump's potential divine role, from the recognition of Jerusalem to his narrow escape from harm. As we delve into these events, we invite you to reflect on their significance and share your thoughts. Could these signs be evidence of God's hand at work? Stay with us as we uncover this compelling story. 1. Historical parallels, the unlikely leader. The Bible is rich with stories of God calling upon unlikely individuals to fulfill His plans, often those who seemed least qualified by worldly standards. Moses, for instance, was a man of insecurity and speech impediments, yet he was chosen to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. David, a mere shepherd boy, was anointed king and went on to defeat Goliath, establishing his place as one of Israel's greatest leaders. These examples remind us that God's choice does not depend on human perceptions of capability, but on His divine wisdom and purpose. In modern times, many see a parallel in Donald Trump's rise to political prominence. A billionaire businessman with no prior political experience, Trump's ascent to the presidency of the United States defied conventional expectations. Like Moses, who initially resisted God's call, and David, whose potential was dismissed by those around him, Trump was an unconventional choice. Yet his unorthodox path to leadership resonates with the biblical theme of God using the unexpected to accomplish extraordinary things. Throughout Scripture, God's chosen individuals often faced intense opposition and doubt. Moses was doubted by his own people, and David was underestimated even by his family. Similarly, Trump faced immense scrutiny and resistance, not only from political elites, but also from media and societal institutions. Yet, he persevered, rising to become a prominent figure on the global stage. To many believers, this resilience suggests a higher purpose, much like the perseverance of biblical figures who were guided by God's hand. What stands out in these biblical stories is that God's chosen often exhibit flaws and imperfections. Moses doubted his abilities, and David committed grave sins during his reign. Yet God's grace and purpose worked through them to achieve His divine plan. Trump, too, is not without his flaws, but his life's trajectory suggests that perhaps it is not perfection that God seeks, but a willingness to serve as an instrument of His will. In Trump's rise, many see echoes of the Bible's narrative of redemption and purpose. Just as God called Moses to deliver His people and David to establish His kingdom, could Trump's leadership be part of a modern-day mission? For those who see through the eyes of faith, the answer seems clear. God has always worked through the unexpected to accomplish His will, and He may be doing so again. 2. The prophecy of Cyrus and Trump's mission. Isaiah 45 introduces us to Cyrus, a foreign king whom God anointed to fulfill a divine purpose. Despite not knowing God personally, Cyrus was chosen to deliver the Israelites from captivity in Babylon and to facilitate the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. This profound narrative demonstrates that God can work through leaders outside his covenant people, using them to achieve his plans in ways they may not fully understand. The parallels between Cyrus and Donald Trump have stirred significant discussion among Christian believers, many of whom view Trump as a modern embodiment of this prophecy. Cyrus's story is striking for its symbolism and scope. He was called God's anointed, a term often reserved for figures like priests and kings of Israel, yet he was neither Jewish nor a worshiper of Yahweh. In Isaiah 45:4, God declares, "I summon you by name and bestow on you a title of honor, though you do not acknowledge me." This divine appointment transcends personal faith or understanding, focusing instead on fulfilling God's larger plan for his people. Trump's journey to power, marked by unlikely victories and unanticipated actions, mirrors this divine orchestration. Like Cyrus, Trump has made decisions that resonate deeply with biblical prophecy, most notably recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. This bold move aligned American policy with ancient promises found in Scripture, reaffirming Jerusalem's central role in God's covenant with his people. Just as Cyrus's decree to rebuild the temple was a pivotal moment in biblical history, Trump's actions are seen by many as fulfilling a modern chapter of God's narrative. Critics often argue that Trump's imperfections and lack of overt religiosity disqualify him from such a role. However, the story of Cyrus reminds us that God's chosen leaders are not always devout believers or moral exemplars. Instead, they are instruments of his will, guided by a purpose that transcends their understanding. Trump's presidency, marked by significant decisions affecting Israel and religious freedoms, has led many to believe that he, like Cyrus, may be unknowingly fulfilling a divine mission. Isaiah 45 teaches us that God's plans are far greater than human comprehension. Whether through ancient kings or modern leaders, he moves in ways that defy expectations. For those who see Trump as a contemporary Cyrus, his actions are not mere politics, but a reflection of God's hand at work in the world. 3. The spiritual significance of Jerusalem. Jerusalem holds an unparalleled place in the biblical narrative, described as the city where God chose to establish his name and dwell among his people. Mentioned over 800 times in Scripture, Jerusalem is not just a geographical location, but a spiritual epicenter, a symbol of God's covenant with Israel. Its significance is echoed in biblical prophecies that speak of its role in God's redemptive plan for humanity. When Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and relocated the U.S. Embassy there in 2018, many viewed it as a fulfillment of these ancient prophecies, aligning his actions with divine purpose. In the Bible, Jerusalem is portrayed as the eternal city, the place where God's presence dwells. Prophecies in Ezekiel and Zechariah describe its restoration as a precursor to the coming of the Messiah. Trump's bold decision to officially acknowledge Jerusalem as Israel's capital was seen as more than a political move. It was a symbolic step in fulfilling God's promises. Ezekiel 37:28 proclaims, "Then the nations will know that I, the Lord, make Israel holy, when my sanctuary is among them forever." By affirming Jerusalem's status, Trump aligned American policy with biblical declarations, reigniting hope among believers that God's plans are unfolding. This decision came at great political risk. Previous leaders avoided such recognition due to its controversial implications, fearing unrest in the region. Yet Trump, like King Cyrus, took an unexpected step that resonated deeply with Scripture. Many Christians believe this act reaffirmed Jerusalem as the spiritual and political heart of Israel, in line with prophecies that speak of its central role in God's ultimate plan for humanity. Revelation 21 describes the New Jerusalem as descending from heaven, a place where God will dwell with His people in perfect unity. Trump's recognition of Jerusalem is seen as a tangible step toward this eschatological vision. Furthermore, Trump's move symbolized the fulfillment of Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. By supporting Israel and recognizing its sacred capital, Trump demonstrated a commitment to biblical principles, earning the admiration of many believers who see him as an instrument of God's plan. Jerusalem is more than a city. It is a divine symbol of hope, restoration, and God's eternal covenant. For those who view Trump's decision through the lens of faith, it was not just a political act, but a spiritual milestone, signaling the unfolding of biblical prophecy in our time. 4. Divine protection, a narrow escape. In July 2024, during a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, an event unfolded that many interpreted as a powerful sign of divine protection. Donald Trump, standing before an enthusiastic crowd, turned his head slightly to acknowledge a supporter holding a sign. This small, seemingly insignificant gesture proved to be the difference between life and death. At that very moment, an attacker in the crowd fired a bullet aimed directly at him. Instead of hitting its intended target, the bullet grazed Trump's ear, leaving him unharmed. The chaos that ensued gripped the audience, but the incident left many believers pondering. Was this mere coincidence, or was it a moment of divine intervention? The Bible is filled with stories of God's providence and protection over those He has chosen to fulfill His purpose. David, while fleeing from Saul, was repeatedly spared from death through God's intervention. Daniel, thrown into the lion's den, emerged unharmed because God shut the mouths of the lions. These accounts remind us that when God has a plan for someone, no earthly force can thwart it. Trump's near miss echoed these biblical narratives, suggesting that his life is part of a greater purpose yet to be fulfilled. Trump later remarked on social media, "Only God prevented the unthinkable from happening." His words resonate with the promise of Psalm 91:11, "For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways." This verse, cherished by many Christians, serves as a reminder that God's protection surrounds those He has called to accomplish His will. The rally incident became a modern example of this promise, leading many to believe that Trump's survival was no accident. Critics may attribute the escape to luck or circumstance, but for those who view the world through the lens of faith, it was a moment of divine affirmation. Just as God protected His chosen leaders in the Bible, the preservation of Trump's life at such a critical juncture seemed to signal that his mission was not yet complete. This incident reminded believers that when God has a plan, He equips and protects His chosen ones, even in the face of mortal danger. In that brief, pivotal moment in Butler, Pennsylvania, Trump's narrow escape became a testament to the unseen hand of God. For those who believe in divine intervention, it was a sign that Trump's journey is guided by a purpose far greater than what meets the eye. 5. The sacred gift of life, pro-life. Policies. The sanctity of life is a cornerstone of Christian faith. deeply rooted in Scripture. Psalm 139:13-14 declares, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." These words reflect the Christian conviction that every human life is a divine creation, valuable and sacred from the moment of conception. During his presidency, Donald Trump embraced this belief with bold and unwavering pro-life policies, actions that many Christians interpreted as a defense of God's gift of life. From his first days in office, Trump prioritized the protection of unborn children. He reinstated and expanded the Mexico City policy, ensuring that federal funds would not support organizations that provide or promote abortions internationally. His administration also made significant strides in appointing conservative judges to the Supreme Court, including those who contributed to the historic overturning of Roe v. Wade, a landmark decision that reshaped abortion laws across the United States. These efforts were not merely political maneuvers, but acts that aligned with Christian values, affirming the biblical principle that life begins in the womb. Trump's pro-life stance resonated deeply with the Christian community, many of whom saw his policies as evidence of a leader guided by divine purpose. In Jeremiah 1:5, God says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." These words underscore the belief that every life has a purpose ordained by God. By championing pro-life policies, Trump demonstrated a commitment to this sacred truth, earning the support of believers who view the defense of life as a moral and spiritual imperative. Critics argued that Trump's actions were politically motivated, but his steadfastness in the face of opposition suggested otherwise. He was unapologetic in his defense of the unborn, challenging societal norms and standing firm against fierce backlash. For many Christians, this courage was a reflection of God, using an imperfect vessel to fulfill a divine mandate, protecting the most vulnerable among us. Trump's presidency was a pivotal moment for the pro-life movement, reminding believers of the sacredness of life and the power of faith in action. Through his policies, he echoed the timeless truth that life is a gift from God, deserving of protection and respect. To those who see his mission as divinely inspired, Trump's pro-life legacy stands as a testament to God's enduring care for his creation. Sixth, restoration of religious freedom. Religious freedom is one of the most fundamental principles in Christianity, rooted in the belief that worship and devotion to God must come from a place of free will. The Bible emphasizes this in passages like John 8:32, where Jesus declares, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." During Donald Trump's presidency, his commitment to defending and restoring religious freedom was a defining feature of his leadership, particularly in a time when many felt that faith was being pushed to the margins of public life. Trump's administration championed the right to religious expression both in the United States and globally. Domestically, he signed executive orders protecting prayer in schools and ensuring that public employees could express their religious beliefs without fear of reprisal. His policies also safeguarded the rights of religious organizations to receive government funding without compromising their convictions. These actions reassured many Christians who felt their freedoms were under threat, affirming their ability to live out their faith openly and confidently. Globally, Trump's efforts to protect persecuted Christian communities gained widespread support. He launched initiatives to combat religious persecution, dedicating significant resources to aid Christians suffering under oppressive regimes. His administration's outspoken advocacy for those imprisoned or silenced for their beliefs resonated deeply with the Christian community, reminding them of Hebrews 13:3. Remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. By shining a light on these injustices, Trump reinforced the biblical call to care for the persecuted and oppressed. Critics accuse Trump of using religious freedom as a political tool, but his consistent actions suggested a deeper commitment. His vocal support for religious values challenged societal norms that sought to remove faith from the public sphere. This was not merely political maneuvering. It was a bold affirmation of the importance of faith in shaping a just and moral society. For many Christians, Trump's advocacy for religious liberty represented a defense of biblical principles at a critical juncture in history. His efforts ensured that the light of faith could shine brightly in a world increasingly hostile to religious expression. To those who believe his mission was guided by divine purpose, Trump's work to restore religious freedom was a testament to God's enduring call to uphold truth and justice. 7 Trials and Prophecy: War in Israel after his presidency. The Bible repeatedly emphasizes that Israel, God's chosen nation, would endure trials and tribulations as part of his divine plan. Prophecies in Zechariah, Ezekiel, and Revelation speak of times when Jerusalem will be a focal point of global tension, surrounded by enemies and tested by conflict. After Donald Trump's presidency, many believers saw the subsequent challenges faced by Israel, notably the resurgence of war and unrest, as a continuation of this prophetic narrative. In 2020, Trump's presidency ended, and with it came a shift in U.S. foreign policy toward Israel. During his tenure, Trump had strengthened Israel's position on the global stage, recognizing Jerusalem as its capital and brokering the Abraham Accords, which fostered unprecedented cooperation between Israel and several Arab nations. These actions aligned with Genesis 12:3, where God promises, "I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse." Yet, following his departure from office, Israel found itself once again at the center of escalating tensions. In October 2023, Israel faced a renewed outbreak of violence, a war that many Christians interpreted as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Zechariah 12:3 warns, "On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves." This ancient prophecy seemed to echo in modern times as Israel stood isolated and embattled, defending its sovereignty against mounting threats. To some believers, Trump's absence from the global political scene symbolized the removal of a protective hand, a sign that Israel was entering a prophesied period of testing. Biblical prophecy often portrays trials as a precursor to restoration. Ezekiel 38 describes a great battle against Israel, which ultimately leads to God's intervention and the fulfillment of his covenant promises. The war in Israel reminded many Christians of this divine pattern. Tribulation comes before redemption, and through it, God's purposes are revealed. Trump's role in supporting Israel during his presidency is seen as part of this greater plan, a temporary reprieve that set the stage for future events foretold in Scripture. For those who view the world through the lens of prophecy, the challenges Israel faced after Trump's presidency are not random. but divinely orchestrated. These trials serve as a reminder of God's faithfulness to His people and His ongoing plan for humanity, even in the face of adversity. Reflecting on the signs and their divine implications. The journey we've explored reveals 7 profound signs that Donald Trump may be part of a divine plan, echoing the ways God has worked through history. From his unlikely rise to leadership, reminiscent of biblical figures like Moses and David, to the parallels with King Cyrus in Isaiah 45, Trump's actions and experiences align with themes of divine intervention. His recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital and his championing of pro-life values reflect a deep connection to biblical principles, while his defense of religious freedom and near-miraculous survival during the 2024 rally suggest a greater purpose at work. Finally, the trials faced by Israel after his presidency remind us of the ongoing fulfillment of God's prophetic timeline. These signs are not just moments in history. They challenge us to consider the possibility of divine orchestration in our modern world. Could these events be a continuation of God's eternal narrative? Or are they simply coincidences interpreted through the lens of faith? We invite you to reflect on these questions and share your thoughts in the comments. If this video has inspired you, consider exploring your own faith journey and seeking God's guidance in today's turbulent times. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue uncovering these profound stories of faith and purpose.